Yes, I saw this movie. I did it for you guys. I subjected myself to the Assassin's Creed movie. I'm kind of in shock right now. If I sound kind of a little out of it, it's because the movie was so bad. It hasn't really made an impact on me yet. I mean, there's movies like Tron Legacy or Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy that are so bad and so boring you try to kill yourself when you're watching them just so you can feel something. New Moon was also like that. Then there's movies that are just aggressively shitty, like El Topo, like Holy Mountain. Actually, Cold Souls is more boring. Stuff like Repo the Genetic Opera. Stuff like that is just so shitty. It actually like physically hurts you to watch it. And then there's things like this, which is just there's something called the presence, which is kind of a term I have for movies like this. The presence is when there's something excruciating about a movie. Just the plot is just very strangely paced. Normally it's not edited well, and there's just a lot of scenes where people are just kind of standing, and it just goes too slow, and it just kind of triggers something in your brain that is excruciating and dull at the same time. I'll have to think of some examples of the presence. It's kind of difficult to really explain. Pirates 4 is a good example of a movie with the presence. Pirates 3 had it too. Most kind of bad movies from like the 1980s and 1970s had it. Rogue One kind of had it a bit. It's just often really weird. So, Assassin's Creed the movie. This movie actually had a budget, which I am shocked by. This movie had a budget of $125 million. What a waste of money. That could have been spent making better movies. Much like Rogue One, which could have been spent doing a backstory for Palpatine or making a movie about Thrawn, or something that was, like, interesting. But, yeah, so this movie actually starred people who had careers, which is really strange, because you figure, who the fuck wants to be in the Assassin's Creed movie? But it has Michael Fassbender, who has a career, and we have Marion Cotillard. How old is she, anyways? 41. Okay, she looks kind of older than she is. And then Jeremy Irons is in this movie, but he's in a lot of shitty movies. He always hams it up. But yeah, it's just, I don't even really know. Okay, so I'm just trying to think of where to even start talking about how shitty this is. It suffers, I think, at its core, the same problem that all video game adaptations suffer from. Now, video game plots are hard to turn into movie plots because there's a lot of filler. If you were going to just take the Assassin's Creed plot, for instance, Altair has to kill 4 people and go to 4 different cities. Now, that's done because if he only had to kill one person, the game would be over in 3 hours. And it takes a lot of time to develop an engine. It's kind of increasing returns. Like, once you develop the engine and the character models, that's the majority of the development. To just add more content with an existing engine, and the voice actors are there, and to just kind of have them do some extra lines is pretty cheap. So if they were going to make it into a movie, they would have had to massively cut it or just kind of rewrite it. I think that's possible. I think you could have just taken the original Assassin's Creed plot, dramatically cut down the Altair part, kept pretty much all of the modern day scenes, and I think it would have been fine. But let me just talk a bit about some other video game movies, and why it's shitty and why this movie is shitty. The issue is that the adaptations never have anything to do with the source material. And in a lot of cases, the source material would lend itself to making a movie. You'd have to rework it a lot, but there's no reason why they couldn't directly adapt it. Instead, they always make up their own like movie plot that has very little to do with the original. So let's just talk about a few that I've seen. I actually kind of like the Super Mario Brothers movie because it's so bad and so weird. It's actually a lot of fun. Pokemon the first movie was bad. I actually thought Pokemon 2000 was a pretty good movie. Lara Croft Tomb Raider was epically mediocre and lame. It at least was like similar to the source material it was based on. The first Resident Evil movie wasn't terrible. House of the Dead was god-awful. House of the Dead was like physically painful. It's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. It actually was kind of like the game, but the game was an arcade game with no plot. So, sorry about that. What are you going to do? The Blood Rain movie had absolutely nothing to do with the source material. It took place in medieval times when the video game took place during World War II. And then the second game was like Wild West Blood Rain when neither game takes place during that time period. Dead or Alive had nothing to do with the source material. Silent Hill was not as bad as some. It at least took place in Silent Hill. But even so, it was pretty lame. The Hitman movie was complete shit. Far Cry, which Uwe Boll also made, had nothing to do with the original source material. Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li is super violent, super graphic, and just a very strange film. It has nothing to do with Street Fighter. It's just really fucking weird. See, we have Silent Hill Revelation, which I couldn't even watch. It was so bad. We have Ass Creed. They're rebooting Tomb Raider. They're making another Sonic the Hedgehog movie. Well, fuck me. This is gonna be awful. So those are kind of some examples of video game movies. The generalized problem is none of them really have anything to do with the source material. And I don't get why they couldn't just make it based on the source material, because, like I said, the source material is there. But for some reason they can't. It's just too hard. It's just too hard for them to do it. So, nothing I can do. It is what it is, but I digress. So let's try to talk about this shitload of fuck, as the angry video game nerd would say, called Assassin's Creed. Now, why is this movie bad? It's a film in which every decision that was made in its creation was awful. I know it's a cliche. I know it's lazy for me to say this. But you gotta wonder, there's gotta be like one guy who, when they were filming this movie, was like, excuse me, this doesn't really seem like a good idea. This is really bad. And then they probably killed that guy with a hidden blade. It's just, oh, fuck. Oh, why you make me do this? Okay, let's just start from the beginning and I'll try to explain why this is so shitty. Okay, the plot summary, which I'm reading as I do this, doesn't even reference the prologue. That's how shitty the prologue is. So it begins with an initiation ceremony, which all assassins go through. That's good, because that is something from the video games. So generally speaking, when someone becomes an assassin, they either have the ring finger on their right hand branded or cut off. It's cut off so the hidden blade can go through that spot. For those of you who don't know, the hidden blade is basically kind of a bracer that you put under your arm, and it's spring-loaded, so when you flick your wrist, it shoots out, and you have a blade under your arm. And they can use that as a hidden weapon for assassinations. It's also very effective when combined with martial arts as like a close combat weapon. So they cut off his finger, and we hear the Assassin's Creed. Let me just try to see if I can remember it. Where some men cling to truth, we know that nothing is true. Where some men cling to laws or morality, we say everything is permitted. And this is kind of the problem. I have a video about the whole series I'll put up at some point. But the ideology of the assassins is completely asinine. So their motto is nothing is true, everything is permitted. So they don't believe in objective reality. They don't believe in truth. And I know that I've actually like read about this. It's not just me taking it face value. I've seen their attempts to try to explain it. Everything is permitted is a rejection of any type of moral code. It's a rejection of any ideology. It's a rejection of religion. They despise all these things, and yet they're an extremely moralistic people who pursue social justice. I talk about this all in a lot more depth in my specific review. But like Lenin was a member of the Assassins. I think Gandhi was. There's a whole bunch of people, many of whom were violent, who were members of the Assassins, who violently redistributed wealth. So he goes through the initiation process. And then after that, we cut to a scene of our main character, Calum. Calum is being raised on a commune in the middle of the desert. And I'm immediately like, oh, that's like Desmond. Maybe Desmond's actually in this movie. Because Desmond references in the Assassin's Creed games that he was raised to be an assassin on a compound in the middle of the desert. So he comes home after trying to jump something with his bike. It doesn't really mean anything. And then he goes to his house and he finds that his mother's dead and his father's standing in assassin garb next to her with a hidden blade with blood on it. So then he runs away and a bunch of like black SUVs show up and Templars get out and they arrest everybody in the community, but they don't get the kid because the kid's somehow able to outrun the guys with cars in the desert with no cover. So he gets away. So this entire prologue is completely pointless and it has nothing to do with the rest of the movie. So we cut to 30 years later where Calum Lynch killed somebody. They never really go into detail. He mentions it's a pimp. It might have given him some background if we like saw or heard about something that he killed. Maybe like he explains that the guy was like trafficking girls, like little kids. Maybe give him a little character depth. Makes sense, but he just refers to it once. So he's being assassinated. He's being executed. Priest tries to absolve his sins and he tells him to fuck off because he's a heathen. So they execute him, but then he wakes up and he's at Abstergo, the Abstergo Foundation. Now, in the video games, Abstergo is a massive transnational conglomerate. The Templars had merged a whole bunch of different companies like General Electric, Ford, etc. together to make the super conglomerate Abstergo, which they use to dominate the world's economies and control various governments. In this movie, Abstergo is a charitable foundation. What the fuck? Why couldn't it just be a company? Why did they have to change it? Why couldn't they have just left it like as this ominous, all-powerful company? So they have this building in Spain, and that's the only building they have. So he wakes up there, and we're introduced to Sophia, who's our other main character, played by Marion Cotillard. Cotillard? I can't pronounce French. The French have weird spelling. We'll just call her Sophia, though. That's an easy name for me to pronounce. If people ever wonder why I have such trouble pronouncing names despite otherwise being pretty articulate, part of my nonverbal learning disability is a trouble sometimes perceiving series of letters, and it can just be difficult for me to read names sometimes if I haven't heard them out loud. So basically, he goes to this facility, and we're treated to long, boring scenes of him walking around the facility. He goes to the mess hall, and there's a bunch of mixed race people who are implied to be assassins who were captured earlier, but despite being assassins they captured, they don't bother to keep them locked up or really watch them that carefully. They let all these assassins roam around, largely unsupervised in a big area. They also let them order whatever kind of food they want and give them metal utensils. It's literally pretty much like the worst prison ever, but they tell Calum it's not a prison, it's a hospital, and they're going to cure him of violence. So, yeah. So that happens, and we're treated to a really lame joke where they're like, it's an open menu, but I recommend the chicken. And then the waiter comes by and goes, it's an open menu, but I recommend the chicken. And then he asks for the steak. So they stick him in the Animus. Now, the Animus allows you to relive genetic memories. One of the premises of Assassin's Creed is all the memories of your ancestors are stored within your genetic code, and the Animus allows you to relive the memories. Now, this can be useful because it recalls history as like an objective experience, because you see it, you feel it, etc. It also means you synchronize with your ancestor. You gain their skills, you gain their combat experience, you gain their muscle memory. So in the games, Desmond is able to rapidly gain the skills of not just Ezio, but also Altair and Connor, or whatever his name is from the third game. He's able to gain all of their skills in a couple weeks because he synchronizes with them and he remembers all his past lives, more or less. So in the games, it's kind of like a chair or like a doctor's table you lie down on. In this one, they wanted to go all fancy, so it's like this giant claw that they put him on, and they give him the hidden blades that belong to his ancestor. They need those for some reason. And as he's moving around in the dream, his body is doing it in real life. And he's just like flying across the room with this giant claw. And I'm just like, why is this necessary? Why do we have to have this big stupid claw? I guess to make it more exciting. But all it does is when we're in the past, it constantly flashes back to the present of pictures of Michael Fassbender acting like a moron, flying around in this lame crane thing. So they go back, and so they send him in the Animus to go back to relive the life of Aguilar. I'm just going to call him Altair because I can pronounce Altair. I think it's Aguilar de Nerja. I'm bad at pronouncing things, sorry. I'm just going to call him Altair. So it takes place during 1492. Granada's about to fall. The Templars control the Spanish monarchy, in particular Tormaca. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Tormaca? Whoever the head of the Spanish Inquisition, I'll just call him the Chief Inquisitor, is a Templar, and they've succeeded in taking control of Spain. We're treated to a truly cringeworthy scene in which the Templars destroy a village and they find the son of the last king of Granada. So that they find the Caliph's son, and one of them yells, now all of Spain is under the Templar order. Why would he yell that? Like, I thought the Templars were supposed to be secretive. Why is he openly talking about the order? But what happens then is a bunch of assassins jump them, and they kill most of them, and they save the Caliph's son. So then later, they get captured. I think they get captured off scene. This movie's really hard to follow. And then they're about to be burned at the stake, and they succeed in escaping, and we're taught that Altair is in love with Maria, who's another assassin, and when they're about to be burned, she says that assassins aren't allowed to love. Because being obsessed with freedom and individual responsibility, or basically being an anarchist, means you live by an extremely strict set of rules. Wait, what? So throughout the movie, the assassins are always like, the creed is, our lives are nothing, love is nothing, personal affection is nothing, everything must be subjugated to our cause and to the greater good. So their belief is in free will and their belief is in the greater good, but belief is in free will and individualism, but everything about their order is against it. Whereas the Templars are all about the greater good, but they don't really seem to demand as much of people in their personal lives. Anyways, so they get captured by Tormaka's enforcer, and then they're taken. There's like a long action scene where they escape being burned at the stake, and it goes on and on and on, and it's just really boring. And it's just basically like wanking the fans off. I'm like, look, they're free running. It's just like the video game. Give us money. Give us money. I know the plot shit, but this scene's good at least. Then they go to to Spain, and okay, so why are the Templars doing this? Why do the Templars give a shit? Well, they're looking for the Apple of Eden. Now, in the video games, the pieces of Eden are relics left over from the first civilization. I'll go over this more when I do my full Assassin's Creed series review. But they're left over from the first civilization, and the technology from them mainly allows you to control people. It can distort people's perceptions of reality. It can brainwash people. It can make people see whatever you want them to see. But in this movie, the Apple of Eden is a computer that contains the genes that control free will. Wait, what? So the Templars want to get the Apple of Eden to find the genes that control free will, and then use them to perform gene therapy on all of humanity to remove their free will. What does free will even mean in the context of this movie? How would that work? Are they going to just like make a virus and infect everybody with it? And is this virus just going to cure everybody of free will? Why is there an Apple computer? They try to explain it to Calum, and he's just like, they're like God or an ancient race made it. So the Templars believe in God now? It's weird because the Templars are explicitly atheist in the video games. I think there's one or two who believe in God, but generally speaking, they're radically like materialistic and atheistic. The assassins tend to be agnostic, but they're more open to having religious members than the Templars are. So Sophia and Calum begin to have an awkward forced romance plot, and they bond over realizing that Sophia's mother was also killed by an assassin. And then they find out that they have his father at the facility because they kidnapped all the remaining assassins and forced them into the Animus to try to get their memories, but none of it worked. So, okay. That makes sense. So he talks to his father, and his father's like, I killed your mother so she wouldn't be put into that machine. And then Calum gets angry because of contrived plot point. If they force him to use the Animus against his will, the Animus will kill him. But if he does it on his own free will, then the Animus doesn't hurt him. So because he's angry that his father's a douche, and the other assassins at the facility try to kill him, but they don't put them in solitary confinement or otherwise punish them or watch them, despite the fact that they tried to kill the inmate that is all their plans are based on. He agrees to help them and willingly goes back into the Animus. Now, around the same time, the Templar High Council, led by a woman, of course, is saying, we're going to shut down your experiments. Your experiments, they're over. And he's like, well, it's only $3 billion. It's a drop in the bucket. And she's like, consumerism has defeated humanity's free will. All that matters now is living standards. People are perfectly willing to give up their liberty. We've tried many things over the years, politics, religion, ideology, but it turned out all that was needed to enslave humanity was the almighty dollar. And she's like, we will cut your funding in 1 week's time. And he's like, could you give me a couple extra days? I kind of have the guy here who's going to lead us to the Apple of Eden. I literally need like 2 weeks. And she's like, no, it has to be next week that we cut it because of reasons, because it makes the plot demands this thing to go faster. So they plug him back in, and they find out that Altair goes to the Caliph, but before he gets there, somehow the Spanish get there with the Caliph's son, and they trade his son. For some reason, the Caliph has the Apple of Eden, although his kingdom still gets defeated, so he obviously isn't using it. And despite the fact that computers haven't been invented and assassins don't know what gene therapy is, so they have the apple is basically just a hunk of metal. They know that if the Templars get it, then in 600 years they'll invent computers. I guess 500 years. They'll invent computers, and then they'll invent gene therapy, and then they'll be able to use the apple to change the humanity. They somehow know that in the 15th century. I don't know, just go with it. Keep shoving popcorn in your mouth. So Tormaka gets it, but the assassins jump in. Altair's girlfriend Maria gets killed, and he's really upset, and then he kills his arch nemesis, and then he runs away with the Apple of Eden. And as he runs away with it, he does a leap of faith, and the leap of faith blows the Animus up for no obvious reason. And Sophia's like, a leap of faith. Now, she believes that the Apple of Eden is going to be used to cure humanity of its violent impulses. But when she finds out that it's going to be used to destroy humanity's free will, she gets really offended and just is really angry about the whole thing. And she turns on her father, and I think she started to fall in love with Calum, even though they've known each other for like 2 days, and Calum is like a psychotic asshole. So while all this is happening, Calum discovers the location of the Apple of Eden. Apparently Altair gave it to Christopher Columbus, and then it's buried with Christopher Columbus in Spain. I never get it in these movies where there's like the super precious object. The assassins obviously aren't using it for anything, so why don't they just put it in like a metal box, put the metal box in a concrete box, and drop it in the middle of the ocean? No one would ever be able to find that. Drop it in the Marianas Trench. They aren't even, and then the guy who does it just doesn't tell anybody. There's no way they'd ever be able to find it, but they don't. They always keep it in like really obvious places. So Sophia and her father for some reason is credited with the whole operation, even though it was his daughter who did it. So they start taking off in a helicopter, but all the assassins who previously had numerous uprisings who they didn't bother disarming, they steal a bunch of weapons, because there's like a room where they have all these assassins' weapons just basically sitting out, and the assassins are allowed to go in there, and they don't really supervise them. So they stole a bunch of assassins' weapons when they were in there. And then they start killing all the guards and trying to get to Calum to stop him from revealing it. And Abstergo apparently doesn't hire competent security guards, because the assassins literally kill like 100 people, the 5 of them. And the security guards don't have guns for some reason. They just have billy clubs. If they had a couple guys with pistols, the whole thing would have been over. But despite being a $3 billion institute that's run with military precision, they couldn't afford to have a SWAT team. They couldn't afford to have like a couple ex-Navy SEALs with like assault rifles, because it makes the movie more exciting. So they get to Calum, and Calum has just realized that he's been fooled this whole time, even though it's pretty obvious what the Templars were going to do. And he's like, we fight because we're assassins. Nothing is true. Everything is permitted. And then he fully synchronizes with his ancestor. So you may be saying, Argent, we didn't really learn anything about Altair. You didn't even say he said anything. Yeah, Altair doesn't say anything in this movie. He's completely superfluous. The flashbacks are all entirely action scenes that are put in to make the movie less boring. Normally in the Assassin's Creed games, you have a present plot and a past plot. And they're kind of separate from one another, and they're just kind of very different. In the first Assassin's Creed game, whenever you beat a kind of an area of the game, namely did one of the assassinations you had to do, as Altair, you were rewarded with a scene back in the present where Desmond talks to Lucy or someone else, and you discover a bit more about the plot. It kind of advances the mystery. And in the subsequent games, you go back and forth between the two of them. And they're kind of integrated, and it's kind of cool. But the plot in this movie has nothing to do with the present plot. It's just in there. It's in there so they could have some cool thing. So all the Templars gather at a conspicuous building in London, which has their symbol on it, and is called the Grand Templar Lodge or whatever. So it's secret. Like, after they get the apple, like, you'd think they'd take it to, like, a secret facility with a lot of security. I mean, this is what their entire plan is based on. This is what they've been searching for like 800 years. So instead, they're going to have a high-profile meeting at a building with their symbol on it in downtown London. And they don't really have a guest list, and there's no security. So the assassins basically just walk in. And no one notices. So then Sophia's father is giving a speech about how free will be destroyed and humanity will finally have order. And he holds up the apple and he activates it and it starts glowing lights. So Caleb is like walking down the hall. And he runs into Sophia, who's had second thoughts and is mad that her father's stealing credit for her work. And Killam's like, you have to help me. And she's like, I don't want to help you. And he's like, you're going to help me. And she's like, okay. And how she helps him is she doesn't scream or do anything. She just kind of keeps walking down the hall. And that was like her redeeming moment. And that's when she turns on her father. So then they stab her father and he dies, and they take the apple and they go away. And then it's like, we protect the apple. We protect free will because we are the assassins. And you may be going, what was the point of this movie? There was no point. There was no kind of philosophical concept advanced. The characters were extremely lame. The action scenes had no meaning in them. Because it's like Altair and these other characters in the past. We have no reason to care about any of them. Caleb has no backstory. We don't know anything about his past. He's basically just a blank slate. Sophia, I guess, has a little more information about her, but her motivations don't really make a lot of sense. The Templars obviously seem to have much more noble motivations than the Assassins, but we really don't learn anything about either of them. So let's just refresh this. We don't know anything about the Assassins and the Templars unless you played the games. But this is like a completely different continuity. So you don't know anything about the two main factions. We don't know anything about the past of the main characters. We don't really know anything about their personalities or goals. There's a bunch of supporting characters who we know nothing about. There's an entire plot inserted into the movie in which you barely know the characters' names, let alone anything about them, and you have no emotional connection to them. And all it consists of is just long, drool-inducing action scenes. And it's to recover an artifact that has some vague, ill-defined purpose. And then it ends with a shitty cliche sequel bait ending. And that's Assassin's Creed the movie. And I think I tried to explain everything wrong with it. And this is what's wrong with all video game movies. They can't develop characters. They create their own lore, but do a shitty job of it, so it has nothing to do with the source material. Like, who did they make this movie for? Presumably people who liked the games or were familiar with them. They could have, like, made it more like that. I mean, if people are interested, they'll do the extra reading. If people are interested, they'll play the games and they'll be like, oh, okay, I see. I mean, that's what they did with the Star Wars movies. They made the movies, but they released all the supplemental material, and people read the supplemental material. For the Assassin's Creed games, movie, there's a series of best-selling games that the plot is based on. So why they couldn't do this, why they made this ill-conceived, wretched film that is kind of like a mix of Inception and Wolverine, I don't know. I don't know why this movie exists. I don't know how it got $125 million of funding. I don't know if they thought they were going to make money off of it, or if this is like an Uwe Boll movie and it's like a tax write-off. This might be the most ill-conceived, ill-made, overfunded piece of crap I've ever seen in my life. It's not the worst movie I've seen, nor the most boring movie, but it's just mind-boggling that this got made and this got released in theaters, and that they hyped this up. So hopefully you enjoyed the review. Don't see the movie. It's not even so bad. It's good. It's just so bad it's lame. And it's not even lame like a movie like Suicide Squad, where you can have a lot of fun, like making fun of it and riffing off of it. It's just boring, turn your brain off, lame. I hope you enjoyed the review, and I'll talk to you guys later.